Belarus, the overwhelming majority of media still belongs to the state, is owned by the state and funded lavishly from the state budget, so and serves the state policies. So they are under control. Yeah. So, but independent journalists are outside this control, and therefore, it irritates the Belarusian authorities a lot, and they do everything possible to prevent this free journalism in the country. So, and within the Belarusian Association of Journalists, we do everything possible to support free media and free journalists so that they could do their job in a perfect way and bring the news, the real news, the truth to the people in the country. Unfortunately, concerning freelance journalists, it should be said that freelance journalists are not mentioned in the Belarusian mass media law, and therefore they do not exist for the Belarusian authorities. And it creates grounds, despite the constitutional guarantees for every citizen of Belarus to freely collect, disseminate, store information. So despite all those constitutional guarantees, the absence of the legal status of freelance journalists in mass media law gives grounds for the Belarusian authorities to prosecute freelancers on really far-fetched, really some strange grounds. So they accuse freelancers of producing illegally mass media products, and it is actually not truth, because journalists they create mass media content, and actually it becomes a product as soon as it's edited by the media outlet. Unfortunately, this argument is not heard by the authorities, and only last year we had 28 trials against freelancers all over the country, just within 8 months of the year. And later we had an interview given by our President Lukashenko to independent journalists, and during this interview one of the journalists wondered if this problem still could be solved. And the president gave a promise that he would look into this problem, and that journalists are not rich people, and so that it has to be solved this way or another. Following this promise, the trials ended till the end of the year, so freelancers could work without any hindrances. But then, just all of a sudden, after Catholic Christmas, trials resumed. And only within 5 months of this year we have had already 11 trials, but this time against only 2 journalists from one and the same Gomel region. And just imagine how hard it is for those 2 people to face all that psychological pressure, first of all, and just so morally they are intimidated, and certainly it's very hard for them to do their job when they receive police reports from different police authorities just for doing their job, and that's all.
When a freelance journalist is getting a sentence at a trial in Belarus, what does it usually mean?
Well, it means that the person has to pay a fine. The fines are quite big, unfortunately, because this article that the authorities apply, it's actually tailored not at journalists, this illegal production of mass media products, but it's tailored at some organizations, some legal entities. Therefore, the sums of fines are really huge for Belarus. They are around from 200 to 400 euro per fine. And in Belarus, the average salary is a bit less than 300 euro. So it means that journalists are just deprived now of their means for living. And it's really very, very sad.
After the Arabic Spring, there has been so many changes and challenges that people are not understanding themselves. But in the recent events, Saudi Arabia has gone into war against Yemen. And this war was a catastrophe and is still a catastrophe. Thousands of civilians are killed. The infrastructure is bombed. Schools, UN schools, actually, Doctors Without Borders headquarters. It's a war, and it's really sad to be working there as a journalist because you are under attack one way or another by different parties. And for you to report the suffrage of the people or to try and film, that's a big challenge. It's really hard under those circumstances.
So you live in Norway now, which makes you also one of the audience who's reading about Yemen in the news, but you're not preparing the news. So what do you think about that kind of a situation?
I think it's really, really important to see the country from abroad and to write about it. Because once you are in that situation, you don't see things as you see it from outside. So I'm actually reporting about Yemen, and I'm able to reach the whole world about what's going on because that's how I receive the materials. And we use social media today to speak of what's going on. So as a journalist living abroad and studying, I'm taking my master's as well in Norway in journalism, I've had actually the opportunity to speak for the people one way or another and to make sure that their voices is heard one way or another.
In your new home country, Norway, you have also written about the double standards. And then people here know you about those articles and programs. So what have you changed in Norway so far?
I'm actually proud of the work that we have done so far. Of course, there are some double standards when it comes to the West selling weapons to dictatorship like Saudi Arabia and other countries that's involved in the war. This makes our work as journalists and activists more difficult because we are being bombarded and killed and bombed. So what we have done is that we have made a campaign in Norway through articles, workshops, speaking, seminars, and we have talked about that. And we've asked the Norwegian government to stop selling weapons to at least some of those countries or inform the people beforehand, because usually such decisions are made behind doors and we don't get to choose. And I'm sure if it's left to the people, they would love not to participate in any kind of war, because war is nothing but a loss to every single party.
What are the topics you'd like to dig into in the coming, let's say, 5 years' time?
I think that's a really good question, but we are working towards global diversity and global journalism. Of course, I come from Yemen, and that's why my heart might be passionate about it. But in the end, I look at things from an equal perspective. I try to see, is it the rich stepping on the poor? Is it one way or another unfairness and justice prevailing? Then there's something wrong. And I would love to see myself working towards achieving global justice one way or another. I might sound like a hippie maybe, but I am deep inside because there's something there. We should all work towards global justice, more freedom to respecting and understanding each other.
So you're in the believer that journalists can really make a difference and can change the world?
I think journalists are fantastic, of course, because I'm one of them, yeah. But it's really important to be that person who's not afraid of anyone and who's not trying to make everyone happy, but actually speak it up as it is, no matter what. And you should not worry and think too much about being objective. I think we got it wrong. I think what we should focus on is actually saying how things are like and trying to understand and dig deeper. Why is it like this? And how can we change? If we ask those questions, then maybe we can get somewhere.
And the Trust is the only organization around the world that focus on supporting freelance journalists when they are in a crisis, to help them to overcome a crisis. It was created in 1995 after Rory Peck, who was a cameraman, was killed in Moscow. And at that time, basically, the family was puzzled as what happens when something goes wrong when a freelancer is on an assignment, like Rory Peck was killed. Who brings the body back? Rory Peck was, a very well-respected cameraman, but, he was working for everybody and nobody. So who was responsible for him, right? Luckily, the family was able to do that, but they were wondering what's happening with the so many freelancers like Rory around the world that don't have anyone. And that's how the trust was set up at that time, very modestly, I must say. But sadly, the need for the work that the Rory Peck Trust does has increased, and the trust has increased along with that need. And we've been supporting freelance journalists around the world, not only camera people, print, radio. I mean, nowadays most of the freelancers are octopus. They work in all the platforms. We saw through our small grants that there was a demand for professional psychological support from freelancers. And what we realized is that maybe what we could do was bringing together a group of journalists. This is not therapy, but bringing together a group of professional freelance journalists for a couple of days with some professional organizations, partners that focus on trauma issues. The trust, last year we supported nearly 200 journalists with individual grants, journalists that, had been injured or they were arrested, etc. I would say the vast majority didn't have a risk assessment. And it's something very simple. We have online resources that are for free for freelancers. They can come to our website, download the form. It's a form that you just need to fill out. It's asking the right questions and put the measures. And be aware as well of what's ahead of you. I think that's very important, to be aware of what are the things that can go wrong, and just be prepared and say, well, maybe I'm not prepared to take those risks, so I'm going to find another angle to tell that story, or maybe this is not the right time for me to do this story. I should look for another story, because this is the time where we really honor the work of camera people that, quite often they are behind of the breaking news, behind of the stories that change our perception of the world. And we don't know their names. We don't even pay attention to what they've gone through to actually, bring that to us, no? And so it's a time where we honor the work that these camera people are doing around the world. From we have finalists from you name it. There are maybe more well-known camera people that, apply every year, they submit the work every year. And then you have, camera people that they're very anonymous, that they are in a very remote place in the world, and somehow they knew about the trust, or we've been able to reach out to them, and they're able to apply. Sometimes they're finalists or winners. It doesn't matter at the end of the day. We invite them all, and that kind of like lifts their work, the exposure that they receive. All of a sudden, we are lifting their careers, and that's very important for us. A balance of the year, you can see through the awards, these were the stories that came to our homes and impact us and have been driving the agenda of what's been happening. So it's that time of the year where you kind of like do a little bit of balance. It's sad as well, because quite often we may be remembering somebody who's been killed. So it becomes very emotional, because these are colleagues, these are friends, this is, people we work with. So sadly, we have sometimes, that emotion in the ceremony, the award ceremony.
Story started when I was connected to the hospital. I was like doing a film before the war started for them, like kind of commercial or like film to present the hospital, what they are doing, and in general. And when the Ramos started and the first attacks happened in Gaza in the summer 2014, I asked the director of the hospital if I could join the ambulance unit, and it was in the beginning a challenge because I'm not a doctor, or I'm not really trained well to be in an ambulance, but the only things I want to be with these guys, to live with them, and to experience these days as a filmmaker, and it's quite in the beginning was like it's really challenge because I don't know them. A first time for me being in the ambulance ever in my life, so it was a little bit not easy. So, and the days like started like in the first day of the war. It was like the 8th of July 2014, and it's ended after 51 days of living with them under this circumstances and all the experience we went through.
So what kind of feedback have you received from people who have seen it? I have seen it, and it was a very, shocking experience in many ways. Like you are in the middle of what's happening.
Yeah, I mean, it's really every time I I screen this film for people, like I feel really. It's kind of, for me, I get tired too, because it's my story, and sometimes my friend who are around me, they forgot this was me, but in the same time, all the feedback who I got from the people, it's like the same, it's in different levels, and people get aware of what's happening, and like from the inside, from deeply, and it's really important for us who live in Gaza, and like for the people who live in Gaza, and to show what's really exactly happened during the day, how to live a life under these attacks, how the people survive these days. So in general, it's all the like the feel strong and emotional and stuff like that. So in a way, it's good, but also we try to find the positive way to try to help and to put more names and faces on our situation.
You are now working on other projects already. So what are the topics that interest you now?
I mean, it's still in very early stage of this project, and I'm following a story about like a Gazan refugee. He came in this period, which is with the Syrian refugee crisis and the stuff. He also crossed the Mediterranean like them, and he's now in Norway. He seeked asylum here. But in general, it's still in very early stage, and it's also will be connected to my story being outside Gaza and what experience I got here, and when I got stuck, and the period of waiting. So it's gonna be like about me, about the other guy, and that's in short.
Not many European journalists have ever been to Gaza or ever will be to Gaza. So what would you tell us? So when we need to say something from the area, so how can we approach this kind of a complex?
It's, when you ask me this question, you give me chills. So, but at the same time, Gaza is really beautiful. It's one of the most beautiful places in the area, and that's why all these things happening around it. You will see good hospitality. You will see many people interesting on you because you are foreign and you talk a different language. So you will see like many good things. You will see good things. It's not you will see like a really bad, not bad side, or like sad side, which is affected from the political reason, and you will see the beautiful side, which is the smile, the people, the taxi driver, the sea, all these nice things which is happening also. Even it's a bad situation and siege and blockaded, but it's still the people, they have the ability to smile, and that's the most important thing, to stay with hope and to live with it. And life is beautiful. As I'm always say, life is beautiful, and that's it.